Hey guys, just really quickly wanted to share with you some learnings that I had along the way in terms of building code engine functions. So today we're going to take a quick look at how to throw errors in a way that makes sense. Um, do I have a code engine library I can use real quick? JavaScript, great. Oh no, nope, I lied. Let me make a new package. So one of the problems one of my coworkers came up with was this question of how can I set my landing page in an app? So like let's say I have an app studio, or no, let me say I have a dashboard and I want to have a button that allows the user to push that button and make that their landing page. Now I'm not going to talk through how you code that into your DDX function or whatever, but we are going to take a quick look at writing this JavaScript function here. So I am using JavaScript, which is a little bit weird to me. I usually work in Python, but here we go. So I have a function called setMyLandingPage, and it's going to accept object ID and a string called object type. Now, what I want this to do is if my user does not pass in the value card or page for the object type, then I want it to throw an error that you have to pass page or card, right? And the reason why is because we use the variable object type in my URL. Man, I don't like the way this URL is written. Let me make this f string. Okay, I have an f string. I think they're just a little easier to read. Dollar sign open close, dollar sign create a function called string. Why don't you like my, oh, because it's a capital string. Ooh, like I said, I don't do JavaScript. Okay, so that's my URL. I want it to call um, CodeEngine, and then if it fails, I want to throw an error. Now, I'm going to start where, let's try this where most of us start out at. I'm going to comment this out. And usually we say, call my URL, hope for the hope for the best. I probably wrote my code correctly, so return true, right? Like, I imagine many of us are writing code engine functions like this where we aren't building any error handling in. Okay, when I'm setting up my landing page, my object ID should be a text. My object type should also be a text. And let me say that my object type by default will usually be a page. Okay. Man, I struggle with JavaScript because I don't really understand how to do typing in here, but I think you just add this documentation at the top that says, hey, object type, this is where I describe the thing. All right, and this will say update the user okay, save. All right, let's, okay, and what is the output? Right now, my output is, I'm just going to say, is a Boolean. Boolean. And we'll just say it's success. Oop, we're in JavaScript land. Success. Cool. So then I run my function, pass in my object ID. Now 1, 2, 3 obviously isn't going to work, but Domo's going to try. And it says standard error out, no logs were written, but here is my error. Okay, and it says my function threw an error. Cool. Sweet. Usually you don't want to send back the whole, well here, let me show you why this is kind of funny. Let me duplicate my tab here. Go to my data tab. Let me come home. My dashboards. Okay, here's a real page that does exist. So coming back into here, I'm going to make this page that does exist my default page so I can forget it forever. Okay. All right. So we see when I don't run my code correctly, it throws a standard error and it prints the response object from the API. So the response object from the API includes the status reason, the message, and the tow, which I guess is kind of useful if you're working with Domo support to try to figure out what's going on in our lives. If I run this again and pass in a valid page and a valid object ID, I get a response of true because that's what I told it to return. What happens if I tell it to return R? R being the value that comes back from my send request. So I said return R. The actual type was a Boolean. Okay, so what's happening here is, I kind of like this. Good job, Domo. In my configuration, my output says I should be returning a Boolean, but what I actually returned was a text, and the text was an empty string. Now, this is a little bit confusing. You're like, well, Jay, why are we returning an empty string? Well, the response from the API when you update your page is an empty string. And I can prove that by going into the API, and I think if I go into the People tab, I'm going to monitor network traffic here, and I'm going to set this user's default page. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to go monitor network traffic. I'm looking for my put request. Do I need to push save first? Yes. Okay. So here I sent my put request. Content, landings page, target, da da da. And the response is nothing. There is no response. And so that's why here in CodeEngine it says that the response is an empty string. Again, not the most useful thing in the world, but let's run with this. So da 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 da. Instead of returning the response from the API, which we know is an empty string, I'm going to return true because I assume that if I didn't throw an error, I was successful. And then here, let's see. I want to build in some error handling. So what I'll say is try. Okay, get rid of. Okay, do catch close, and this should be the end. Are you having indentation problems? Oh, yes. Okay. All right. So we're going to say try to update my API. If you're successful, return a true. If we throw an error, though, or sorry, if the CodeEngine send request method throws an error, then I want you to catch it and then wrap it in something descriptive. Right, something that's going to help my users figure out what went wrong. So we call something that we know is going to break. So yes, the function threw an error. Let's look at a description of the error. Aha, we had an API error of 400. It was a bad request. Check a valid object ID. Is it shared with you? So that's something that I can then work into my downstream DDX to say, oh, hey, did you do something silly? I did a similar thing here where I said, hey, object type has to be a page or a card or this API request is going to fail. So if you misspell PAG, you throw an error, object type must be page or card. maybe I'll just so that I'll say invalid inputs. Object type must be page or card. Okay. Do. And then I'm going to wrap that in pix as well. Oh, that's not going to. Can I escape it like that? I don't know JavaScript. Okay. Um, now that we're here, I do wonder if I can do emojis. Okay, so Emojipedia. Let's do exploding head. I like using emojis in my errors. That way I know that I defined it. I wonder if this is going to work. I really do. I really do. Please work. Please work. Misspelled page. Ah! I love it! That's my error. I love it. That's my error. So pretty. Okay, cool. Anyway, so again, what did we take a quick look at here? We took a look at creating a code engine function that accepts input values. I showed you how to add a test at the top to make sure that the incoming values are the values or valid values that we expect. Because I guess TypeScript isn't really supported yet. And then I can throw descriptive errors to help my users handle it. We looked at wrapping our API request in a try-catch block. You really should get in the habit of anytime you send an async request or like a request to URL to an API, wrap it in a try-catch so that you can build in tests for like, this is what I want you to do if something goes sideways. And then you can have like a backup plan. In my case, my backup plan was to throw a different error, but I could have written something else. I could have had it do some other fallback behavior. Um, we also took a look at adding default values so that if I'm using, what is it, workflows? If I'm using workflows, it has a default value so I can run these faster, blah, blah, blah. That was it. Good luck. Have fun. Goodbye.